want to draw some unique connections and some interesting points about the humanistic self-care perspective, essentially, on health, if you haven't seen the previous video. Um, One of the unique differences, I'd say, with this self-care model is that when we take a look at growth towards health, we will lean on experience being the main kind of thing that we look for. However, we view experience in another term. This would be wisdom. So the area where a person has the most wisdom, experience is kind of interchangeable that way. Um, but there's two major ways I see that wisdom can be found, and that is one, asking the person to kind of step into their professional mind where they have the most knowledge, and we use this way of kind of experience in their industry to translate into how that applies to the body and how that works with the nature of how the body functions. In this way, they can gain lots of information really quickly without starting back at the basics and going through those steps and trying to make new connections. We already take an existing system, if you will, the one with the most knowledge, and we create something from that standpoint. Um, and therefore, we have quicker styles of change because you don't have to prove it so much to the person as they already know and quantify the beliefs surrounding what they do as a profession. Now, if that's easily translated into health, which it always is, then we can have growth happening at a faster rate than it would if you didn't do so. Another way of viewing wisdom again is from kind of the reverse approach. If somebody's, let's say, too intellectually based in their um, profession and are quite rigid in how they think around those things, we take them to the opposite environment. This would be an environment based solely on things they don't know anything about. In fact, this is most likely going to be an area of, let's say, new interest, to create an area of new interest. That way, everything is seen as kind of brand new and unique. In this way, exploring these things for the first time, we have great amounts of growth because there is no resistance in this area at all, and therefore things could be taken on in a much more easygoing manner. There's not so much invested in the outcome of the situation, therefore it's easier to see both sides of the fence. This is another way to grow in that sense. Earlier in previous video I talked about the personal environment of health, and I want to draw kind of a similarity to what this is kind of like. It's not the real thing, but it gives you an idea of how it functions. Essentially, a more kind of passive version of that environment is what we'd call a safe environment in today's terms, meaning a space where somebody can feel free to express themselves in kind of whatever way they feel most appropriate. In this environment, they won't be judged or criticized for the way that they act or the way that they do things, but they'll be accepted. In this way, we allow kind of free-flowing expression. This is similar to this personal environment of health, but there's a lot more structure to the environment of health, and it's a lot more progressive. The safe space generally resides within the person, and there are specific kind of parameters that they use to navigate things that are effective for them. In this way, kind of breaking down the defense mechanisms, opening up the experiencing mechanisms so that they can take life as it is a lot more directly. Again, I refer to the affordance perspective of things, kind of denoting the fact that how we feel internally might not be the same thing that's happening externally in our environment, but the combination of the internal and external environment together really allows the, let's say, is the intermediary, if I think that correctly, of the personal environment of health. And if that thing is doing well, being able to exchange appropriately with the external world and perceiving it appropriately in the internal world. Quick example of this is something like, I've always been afraid of clowns. This is my fear. Essentially, are clowns bad? Not particularly. They show up at birthday parties. They show up at amusement parks. They show up at very essentially fun-related, positive places. They're generally a sign of kind of humor and easygoingness and laughter. So even though externally more people will see the clown as a more positive figure and associate with happy things, my perspective, which is internal, which is inside of me, is that that is a negative thing. So if I want to hang out with friends and they're going to have a clown-free birthday party, I will not go. This reduces my amount of experience with fun things because of that challenge. If I'm able to kind of dig deeper into that and figure out why, and not necessarily why, but how I came to be afraid of those things, then we would see that my external and social way of doing things is very similar to other people's. Is it appropriate to always be that way? Not particularly, but that's just an example to give you a quick idea of what I'm talking about. Um, those are some unique and interesting points. Again, one last one before I go actually, is the one of memory. So we generally have a short-term memory and a long-term memory, and they work separately. Apparently, the short-term memory is not that great at remembering things, only holds on to information for short periods of time, and no more than, let's say, 3 things going at once. And the rest works well in long-term memory, where we would recall experiences, and that triggers thought and all those kind of things. However, my suggestion is that it's both memory, and they should essentially work effectively together. And the way that this is best seen, I guess, is when we have, let's say, an athlete who has what they call is in the zone. When that athlete's in the zone, the mind, the thoughts, the body, everything is working as one. It seems that their external reaction is their internal reaction, is their action. In this way, they're able to perform very well. If you can imagine having your best day at work, everything is just going the right way, your thoughts are lining up with what other people are thinking, the project's going smoothly. All these things are because of the way that you're viewing things and the way things are working out in the external world as well, and things work really well in that sense. So we can see then things must be working all together for that to be an experience, and it is one of our positive experiences. It's a very great thing to have that feeling, and in that way, it must be a positive thing, right? There is no negativity that comes from that. That's kind of all things going the way it should, and I'm proposing that that is essentially the mind and body working together with the internal and external world. Um, the mind working with the other mind, essentially. We can say that we're most creative when both sides of the mind are working properly. So we see this cohesion of synergy that always happens. Everything working together, positive thing. When things work against each other, we generally see a negative expression, indicating that something needs to be kind of looked more deeper into. These are just some interesting perspectives that we take when we're using the humanistic self-care approach to health. Hopefully that's insightful, makes you think a little bit, makes you want to ask more questions, and therefore receive more answers. Thank you very much, and have a great day.